If your inventory is constantly full, your gold is always gone, and somehow, even after all that farming, you still don't feel like you have good gear, you're probably keeping too much gear. And I know that sounds obvious, but it's one of those things that is actually slowing your account progression, because the reality is most gear is not worth rolling and not worth keeping. I made a previous video on why you shouldn't be gearing every hero, and this sort of follows on from that principle in the fact that the reality is if you consolidate your gear into the best pieces on your account, it benefits you in so many different ways. Most of those, maybe this could be useful one-day pieces, or trying to invest in multiple gear sets for different roles of heroes, is draining your gold, clogging your inventory, and making it so much harder to identify the gear that actually moves your account forward. So I've rebuilt my gear recommendation settings, and these are intentionally ruthless. These are designed to help you keep fewer, better pieces and stop wasting resources on gear that was probably never going to be good enough anyway. There are 3 versions depending on what stages you can consistently farm, rather than if you are mid-game, late game, early game, because actually it all depends on where you are putting in the farming resources, not what content you've cleared in the rest of the game. And these codes, plus the full spreadsheet breakdown, are going to be linked in the description below. But before you copy anything, I want to be really clear. These settings will sell a lot of gear. That is the point. So don't just grab the strictest code because it sounds the best. Pick the version that actually matches your account, and I'll explain how to do that in this video. If you already stand the philosophy and you just want to have the codes, they are on screen now and they are linked below in the spreadsheet. There are 3 versions. Level 1, which is for when you are consistently farming the 18s. Level 2 for when you are consistently farming 19s to 21s. And level 3 when you are farming 22s to 24s. Now, like I said, the reason I did this based on what you are able to farm rather than where you are in the game is because different people will progress at different points in terms of whether they're hitting APOC or whether they're hitting Nightmare 4 or whether they're hitting Matrix or Gear Dungeons or everything else like that. But the majority of gear in this game comes from the gear raids 1 to 3, and so that is where you need to understand what you are able to farm. Now, if you are in one of those transitions, so for example, you've just done a 19 or you've just done your first 22, you may want to stay in the lower code for a little bit before you transition up. And it's essentially that thing if you're going, okay, I feel I have enough gear now, you move up a gear level. And I think that's the other thing to sort of essentially say is that if you look and see, there are 45 rules roughly for each of the different levels, which means there are a couple of spaces for you to add in codes that you want to add in. And I definitely recommend you do that. The other thing that I would say is that when we get into it, there are certain progression settings in level 1 and level 2 that are not there in level 3. And so lock those pieces of gear that you managed to get for that, because there are some things that when you get them once or you get a set of it, you don't need to get multiple of. The best example I have for that is what's called trash wings or trash invig, which is, it doesn't matter, it could be flat stat, but it's your first set of those invig pieces. Once you have a few of those full sets, you can get rid of that code because you do not need to be keeping like 10, flat defense rings in Wings of Grace. But it might be that you still need to use those trash sets because you now are trying to farm for the stuff that is actually going to go onto all of your healers, but there is that point at which, you're trying to collect that, but you still want to have that bonus. So definitely make sure you lock the gear that you are using and you want to use before you put in a code and you yeet it all, because that can make a big mistake. Anyway, if we have a quick look at this spreadsheet and then we're going to go into the different levels, you will see here in the overview, there's a bit of a key, there's a gear sets table, and there's the import codes. You can just copy paste into there. And then here is the pièce de résistance. This is the beauty. This is the giant spreadsheet that I've made where you can see all of the rules that are in the game and the different levels. Big shout out to a couple of my mods who have sanity checked this and tested it and made sure that nothing was missing. So thank you. And anyway, this has been a labor of love. I'm not gonna lie, this has taken a very long time and a good few iterations to make sure it's all covered. And one other thing to say, just as a note, you will notice there is no defense percentage main rules here. And that is because, in all honesty, if you're using defense bonus percentage on a tank, please swap them to HP bonus. And at the moment, we don't have any really good reason to have defense percentage stats. But if that is something where you want to cover your bases and you want to make sure you do, there are those extra rules that you can put in for yourself. So to just go through the spreadsheet in a little bit more detail, and also to explain how the rules have gone the way that they are. At the very top, we have who the rule is for. So this is going to be for attack DPS. The primary is the primary stat. Now, obviously, with this being red, it is going to be the left-hand side gear. So it's going to be attack for the weapons and HP for the chests. The name is the name of the rule as it shows up in game. And then the sets are what sets here on the gear table that have been included. It's then broken down by levels, level 1, 2, and 3. The requirement is how many substats are required in order for the rule to pass, and then which of those are essential and which of those are secondary. So for here on this first attack plan, we have attack percentage and crit rate as the essentials, and it only needs 2. Whereas in level 2, we are looking for 4 essential substats in this column, and it is going to have attack bonus and crit rate, but it could have any 2 of these stats here. So for example, it could have HP percentage and rage regen, or HP percentage and crit damage. And then finally, the level 3, if it is like this where it is 4 and then the 4 are essential, it has to match those exactly. Now, one of the things with attack DPS is you'll notice at the beginning, all we really care about is attack percentage and crit rate. At level 2, we're trying to bring in either crit damage or attack speed. You can have here that we're going to try and get a couple of quads for the very first time. And then in level 4, we are really only trying to look for quad pieces. Moving on to HP DPS, one thing you'll notice is that pretty much the rules are the same for level 1 to level 3. And that is because, to be completely honest, there are certain roles where they are so niche to begin with that you really only need one sort of gear set in the entire game for that character. At the moment, the only HP DPS that we have is Adrian. And so actually, if you're going to be building him, you're going to want to make sure that you're getting something good. And so, yeah, it doesn't really change through the levels. If you are trying to build an Adrian very early on, as the example, you can put him in pretty much any other HP gear that you have, and there will be other gear that comes through on the tank sets or in broken bits that will have HP percentage and crit rate, for example, so you are able to build it up if you need to. Then the next rule is going to be our healers. It's going to be broken down into those that are there primarily for inspiration. We have our attack-based healers and our HP-based healers. The most important stats for inspiration is going to be attack bonus and flat attack, with either speed or rage regen to boost them, and then HP percentage for survivability. For both healers, you are going to primarily be looking at boosting their speed, their rage, their healing stat, which will be attack percentage for attack-based healers and HP percentage for HP healers. And then you are going to be wanting survivability on both. That's why HP percentage is great on both pieces. Additional rage regen and then healing effect as well is very nice there. And then the final 2 categories are going to be tanks and debuffers. Again, debuffers, it doesn't change between level 1 and level 3 because, to be completely honest, you only need them to be fast and tanky and raging. So yeah, it doesn't really change. There's not much else to it. But the tanks, obviously, when you are getting started, the most important thing is that they have HP percentage. And then as it gets a bit further, you will either want to make sure that they are fast as well as tanky, or that they can rage. And different tanks do prefer different things. And I will say for the left-hand side gear, it is pretty straightforward. When we move into the right-hand side gear, you'll see that things get a little bit more complicated. And that is because there's a lot more variations or main stats that can happen. So again, for attack percentage, when you're getting started, the most important thing is attack percentage main with crit rate. Then again, you are going to be looking at bringing in crit damage and speed, as well as some survivability or other stats. And then again, by level 3, you are going to be looking for those quad pieces. What I will say is when you get to level 3, the reason again I say lock your gear is that even on my account, I have some fantastic pieces that are attack percentage with crit rate, crit damage, speed, and then like flat defense or defense bonus. And it's rolled really well, so I lock it and I keep it. But the whole point is that I want to be bringing in better pieces of gear. It's not gear that I want to keep or replace. So eventually, ideally, all my amazing rolled pieces with defense bonus would actually have flat attack, HP percentage, or rage regen instead. And the rolls are the exact same for the left as they are for the right. It's attack DPS, HP DPS, inspo, attack healer, HP heal, tank, and debuffer, and then 3 rules for regression, which I will go over a bit later on. But the main thing to note is to just sort of see how actually, even from the start, a lot of the pieces are asking for 3 essential substats. And that is because, quite honestly, like I said, the entire point of this is to keep gear that is actually going to be worth rolling and is actually going to move you forward. And so if you're only keeping good gear to begin with, it's a lot easier to go, okay, this is worth a hammer, than it is to go, oh God, do I use a hammer or not? So anyway, that is the spreadsheet. And now let's talk about each of the levels in a little bit more depth. Now, if you are someone who has just started the game and starting to go, well, what are these thumbs up recommendation settings, etc., level 1 is going to be for you. When you get started in the game, obviously you're going to make your way up through the gear raids and you are going to accumulate gear as you go. I wouldn't say you necessarily need a recommendation setting until you are able to clear your first 18 and start to farm that, because up until that point, you're not really going to be farming pieces of gear. And then at 18 is where you are going to want to start to collect the very first pieces of gear to help you break into the 19s. And thankfully, the reason that this is actually doable, and it's because the game gives you this Doom set as part of the Volker quest lines, same as this side, and it's actually pretty decent for when you are trying to get up to the 18s. So this is pretty much going to hard carry. You put it on your primary DPS and there's there. Now, when you do want to put in a gear recommendation setting, this is how you're going to do it. You're going to hit the cell button down the bottom to recommendation settings, hit manage plan, import plan, and then import the code like so. It will then search for it and it will tell you who it has come from and the number of rules included, confirm import, and it will overwrite whatever settings. In terms of that level 1 code, it is the definition of stats over sets. You will see that the gear settings are very similar to that in level 2, but we don't care what set it is in. So you could absolutely have here attack percentage for your attack DPS in a tempered will, in a guardian, in a mana spring, in an acephalus, which are for your tanks and healers, typically speaking, but it's because we don't actually mind where that comes from if we are able to get those wonderful stats, which is going to be attack bonus, crit rate, attack speed, rage regen, crit damage, HP bonus. And ideally, you are going to be getting all of them, and that is what is going to push you up. Not until you start to consistently farm 19s to 21s that you can start to consider looking at the sets and getting those set bonuses. I would say if you can, just a general rule of thumb, try and make sure that the left-hand side of your gear is a set, because the flat bonus that it gives is pretty nice early on, whereas the right-hand side gear tends to be what I'd call like a little bonus rather than a stat increase. And of course, when you're getting started, it is all about those stats. Now, the other thing to note about this level 1 rule is that there are 3 what I call progression sets. The first is something called Baby Tank, which is essentially, we do not care what any of the substats are if the main stat is HP bonus. Because the Guardian set in particular allows your tank to take less damage, it is one of those situations where it really doesn't matter for your first set how bad it rolls or even what the subsets are, because just the HP percent bonus, which is what is going to make your tank survive the most, and being in this Guardian at that level is going to be absolutely fantastic. Now, you only need a couple of these, and so that is what the Baby Tank rule is for. Once you have that, you can just delete a thing. Now, in order to delete rules, you go to Manage Plan, hit the delete button, click it, delete, and you're done. Same with Rubbish Wings, everything else like that. If you want to add a rule for yourself, you just click Add Rule, enter whatever rule you want to call it, click the sets that you want. You can click all if you want all, select the primary attribute and then the secondary attributes, and then the required number of attributes is how many does it need to line up to. So let's say we want to do that on the HP bonus. We're going to go Tempered Will, and we're going to say HP bonus, and we're going to say actually we want to have it to have these stats, for example. Then you can choose whether it's 1, 2, 3, or 4, and then the essential gear is what it has to have in that. So if we're saying it needs to have 3 of these and it needs to have rage regen and crit rate, it means that one of the other substats could be crit damage and attack speed, for example. Now, the other 2 progression rules within level 1 is something called Rubbish Wings, which is essentially your very first set of wings or invigoration. It does not matter what the primary stat is. You are going to be bringing this on a hero like a Laurel that you are not going to be doing anything with the fight other than dropping them down and picking them back up. So this could also be for Lord heroes. But because Wings and Invig give this boost to your DPS by 12% if it's Wings, 10% if it's Invig, it is absolutely crucial to try and get some really bad sets of this. Now, what I recommend you doing is creating some really bad sets. For example, here I've got Trash Wings 1, 2, and 3. And once you have 3 sets, you don't need to keep any more. That rule could be deleted. But yeah, you are going to want to just put these on. They're going to get you started, and they are very helpful. And the other progression rule is going to be just Wings of Grace and Invigoration, having the primary attributes as Rage Regen and Attack Speed, with Rage Regen and Attack Speed as the secondary substat, because it is actually very difficult to try and get these pieces. And At the end of the day, what do you want your healers to be doing? You want them to be going as fast as possible. You want them to be getting their ultimates off. And so that is going to be very, very important to have as the main stats with the substats. And then you can supplement it with that third piece, which is going to either be HP percentage for survivability, attack bonus if it is an attack-based healer, or you could use healing effect if you really need to. So yeah, so that is the level 1 gear code. It is the first one that's going to get you started. Don't be too scared or too worried if you see that loads of gear is being deleted straight off the bat. It is far more important that you only manage to get a few gear sets and gear your heroes properly than it is to have a ton of gear and again, losing out all that gold. If you want more information on what I mean by this, there is a video that I've just done called Stop Gearing Every Hero. Go look at that and learn what gear plans you actually need to progress. Now moving on to the level 2 plan, this is going to be for when you are able to farm the 19s to 21s. You'll see that the baby tank and the trash wings has been yeeted, so make sure you lock those pieces before importing and then like quick selling everything. But this time we are now going to be asking for the right stats to be in the right sets. So if it is a DPS rule, it is going to be in DPS gear. And if it is a tank set, it is going to be asked for tank gear. Now, one thing you will notice is that a lot of the tier 1 sets are still included, and that is because if you have an amazing piece, you are able to ascend it or change it into a better set. Now, I would recommend only doing it on what's called quad pieces, which I will go through in a separate video because it's a question I get asked a lot is, well, what is a quad? And because it's quite a complex thing, that is going to be in a follow-up video. But essentially, this level 2 is going to be looking to get gear into the right sets. And you'll see here on the light account, this is currently still using the level 2, and you'll see that we have 403 pieces of gear, which most people say is, wow, that's not a lot of gear, but actually it has allowed us to roll up really good pieces as soon as we get them and to test them out. It has meant that the sets that we are able to create are also really nice as well. I mean, here on the Hex build, we are investing in the pieces on this account that is going to help progression. The other thing to note is this is also when you're going to want to start being picky with how your gear rolls. And we're going to just grab any piece at the moment to have a look to see how that is. Let's just grab this one here. Forget that it's a bad stat. It doesn't matter. You are going to start to roll this to 12. And essentially, unless it goes, all three of them go over this second line, just yeet it, just delete it, unless it is a quad piece of gear. As I said before, I will go through in a separate video what is a quad and the pieces that you're going to be looking out for. But essentially, this is the point that you really want to start to curate your gear collection so that, again, you are not completely overwhelmed. By curating a collection, you are able to then invest in the pieces that you are able to get with things like recasting hammers, ascension materials, darkfall gems, all the rest of it. And by doing that, you will slowly push to higher content, getting better rewards, etc., etc. And as you can see here, I have some very nice builds now on this light account. And that is because of this very ruthless attitude towards gear. I will just end this section by saying you are going to be in level 2 for the longest period of time. I would say that farming the 19s to 21s is where most people spend most of their time in Watcher of Realms. That is because the jump from 21 to 22 is absolutely massive, and it takes a huge amount of time to actually roll the RNG and get good pieces. That is the other thing to note, the sheer volume of gear that you have to go through in order to get pieces that have 4 required attributes, of which 1 is at least crit rate, is a lot. Like it is a lot. So of course you are going to be staying here for a while, but that's where you also don't want to get overwhelmed by gear. In terms of how much you should be farming, I typically say when it comes to gems, you want to be spending about 50% on stamina, 50% towards summons. But of course, if a limited is announced and it's 2 weeks away, you may want to start stockpiling gems. But this game really rewards you for progress. The amount of free resources you are able to get when you are clearing Nightmare 4, APOC 1, Voidrift Nightmare, you get so many more summons, ancient crystals, diamonds, everything, that actually investing in the gear to help you clear that content is absolutely worth the investment. And finally, we have the level 3 gear code, which is intense, I'm not gonna lie. And as you can see here, after 500 runs, there are very few pieces of gear that are being kept. And that is because by the time you get to level 3 and you have the level 22s to 24s, you are looking for those pieces with all 4 perfect substats. You have enough gear at this point that you are only looking for improvements. And that is very hard to do with the role of the RNG. I think it's really important also to mention that the game does override recommendation settings when it comes to exclusive pieces and ancients. They just all seem to have thumbs up, whether or not they actually fit your recommendation settings or not. So you're still going to have to go through and click and manually have a look. That is why I thought it was really important to have these spreadsheets so that you can actually have a look and see for yourself and start to learn, if you're interested, in what pieces of gear, what stats it is that you're looking for different pieces and for different roles. So yeah, that is just one little caveat that I would say in terms of things. And then, might get lucky and get yourself a quad. Yay! Not sure there is much else to say about this level 3 other than the fact that you are not going to be keeping a lot of gear, and the gear that you do keep is going to be fabulous, but may roll like absolute trash like this piece, but that is what your hammers are for and worth investing. But I will absolutely say, do not import this level 3 gear code as soon as you hit your first 22, and then quick select all unrecommended gear and sell, because you are going to be left with very little gear. As I said before, it takes a lot of time to roll the RNG and get good pieces that have the right substats, and so you just want to be very careful when you get to this. But I will say it will make cleansing a lot easier, because it is going to be about what is coming into your account. Think of it that way. As you progress through the game, you will have your little collection, and then all you are looking for are the upgrades to come in. And that is essentially what level 3 is designed to do, is to filter everything else out except those few pieces that might be an improvement on something you already own. So yeah, I think that is everything about my gear recommendation settings. Do let me know in the comments below if you are brave enough to go for these. I do appreciate that they are very ruthless, but like I said, there is a reason for it. There is a philosophy, and that philosophy is you do not need to gear every hero, and the gear that you do have can be used across lots of content. Like I said, you can find the full spreadsheet, the links, everything in the description below in that Google form. I will just give you a little sneaky hint if you're still here. That Google form is going to be updated when we go over things like quads and Malric gems and other things that are to do with the upgrading gear system in another video. And if you have any questions about gear, do drop them in the comments below. Might be part of this little mini gear series where we are helping you transform that on your account. And also head to my Discord. We have a lovely, welcoming and very helpful community to help answer any questions you have, especially if you have any concerns about what settings you should import or not. Anyway, that is everything from me. Thank you so much for watching. Do like and subscribe if you haven't already. I look forward to seeing you in the next video and the next live stream. So until then, take care and bye for now.